9mm versus 357 Magnum and snub nose revolvers. What I have today is our Federal HST ammunition. I'm going to use my 2-inch Taurus steel frame revolvers, the Taurus 905 to test the 9mm, and my Taurus 605 to test the 357 Magnum. So Federal HST here. I went with the 9mm 124 grain plus P rather than the 147 grain. And people might say, hey, you should have went with the 147 grain because, you know, the 357 Magnum happens to be the 154 grain. But the reason why I went with the 124 plus P is because that's the most powerful version of the Federal HST in 9mm. So I wanted to make this as fair as possible. So our 9mm here, 124 grain plus P, we are rated at 1200 feet per second. I believe that's through a 4-inch barrel. 357 Magnum, we are rated at, let's see here, 1340 feet per second. Again, I believe that's through a 4-inch barrel. So we're going to see what we get here in our 2-inch barrels. So we're going to go through the chronograph, see what kind of velocity and accuracy we get at the same time. Then I'm going to do my 10% clear ballistic test. We're going to go into plain clear ballistics just to see what the best potential is of the cartridges are, see how they perform. And then after that, I'm going to do more of our real world simulation where I have 4 layers of denim on this first 3-inch piece that represents our pectoral muscle. After that, we'll have a 1/4-inch medium density fiberboard that's going to represent ribs or sternum. That'll be more of our real world simulation. And then I am going to shoot at the steel to see what kind of practical accuracy I can get with these. So let's get started with this test. All right, first up we have our 9mm, and like with a lot of these cartridges I'm going to test for bullet creep here. So I got marker around the case mouth and around the base of that bullet there that's exposed to see if we have any bullet creep out from recoil. I don't think we will with this because Federal HST, like a lot of other brands like Spear Gold Dot and stuff like that, they have a sealant around the bullet, and that actually acts as a glue. And it's meant to keep out water, but it tends to act as a glue as well. So this is rated at 1200 feet per second. I know we're not going to get that. Through the Taurus G2C, I think I actually had above 1150 feet per second with this round. And this revolver has about the same amount of barrel travel. So I'm hoping to get something like that, but I doubt we will. So let's see what we get with our 9mm plus P here. About 5 yards from that target. Error read. Interesting. I've went about 2 months without a single error read. All of a sudden I have an error. 1123. 1119. Pretty good velocity. Now let's pull out this last round here and see if we have any bullet creep. And surprisingly, there is just a tad. It's not significant, but there is just a tad. Let's try to get one more velocity read here. 1119. So not too bad for velocity overall, to be honest. I think the sunlight is a little bit bright today, so it's causing me some chronograph issues. So 357 mag, I really don't want to fire this stuff. You know, heavy bullet, full powered Magnum, they tend to recoil a little bit. So I'm going to go single action and see what we get here. 1085. No read. 1130. 1140. 1043. Wow. 1105. So not particularly consistent. Yeah, a good amount of recoil. Case ejection is good though. It's honestly not as much recoil as a lot of full power 357 Magnums. It's kind of hard to say though. It did seem like it had quite a bit though. So let's set our ballistics gel block, see how these two compare. All right, first up we'll do our best potential shot here, just in plain gel. So 9mm, let's see what this does. All right, so hit that with our 357 Magnum. Let's take a look. All right, so a little bit of a difference there in penetration, but honestly, it looks like our cutting power and everything looks pretty good between both of these. Both of them look like they did really well. When we look at our energy dump here, our 9mm on the bottom, our 357 on top, pretty similar. But, you know, the 357 Magnum is a much heavier bullet, so you basically, if you were to shoot that heavier bullet at the same velocity of that 9mm, it wouldn't do nearly as well. But because we had so much power going on there, that 154 grain bullet pretty much did what the 9mm did, but did it for a longer distance. Pretty much that's how it works out. So with our 9mm, really good overall. And when I see damage like this, it indicates full expansion of hard petals and cutting. So whenever I see something like that, I'm always very impressed with it because I know that that's actually the diameter it's cutting through. You know, sometimes when you shoot some types of hollow points that don't have those harsh, hard petals, it'll make a damage path, but it's more from stretching. As when we see it where there's these little tiny lines in it, it means that those hard petals are cutting, and it's very impressive for me to see. So what we got going on for penetration with our 9mm is about 14.5 inches of penetration. Camera parallax will make it look like that bullet is a little bit further up from where I'm putting my finger, but yeah, 14.5 inches. Now our 357 Magnum, we got about 19.25 inches. Pretty good overall. I don't think that that's really what I would consider over penetration. I don't think that would pass through an attacker. You know, it's slightly more than our, you know, what our statistic is supposed to be, 12 to 18 inches, but it is clear gel. And, you know, bullets tend to go a couple inches further in clear gel than what they do in organic gel. And that's where the 12 to 18 inches comes from, organic gel. So overall, both of these did pretty well. So let's put on our denim, put in our MDF, see how they compare in more of our real world simulation. All right, 9mm, 4 layers of denim, 3 inches of clear ballistics, a 1/4 inch MDF for our ribs. Let's see what our 9mm does here. All right, let me set that back up and hit it with the 357 Magnum. All right, same thing, 357 Magnum. Let's see what this does. Let's go take a look. That's a lot louder. All right, both of these did pretty well overall. Our 9mm on the bottom, a 357 mag on top. Both of these had expansion on that first 3 inches. We can see energy dump in that first 3 inches, a little bit more with the 357 mag. However, going through the MDF, it's actually a little bit smaller looking. So yeah, both of these did pretty well overall, and I'm really surprised at how well these are doing, especially with our 9mm, because oftentimes you lose like a couple inches of penetration going through the MDF, but with our 9mm, we did not lose that much at all. You know, through plain gel, we had 14.5 inches of penetration and good expansion. Through our denim and MDF, we have straight line penetration, still got that same cutting pattern going on, and we got about 14 inches of penetration, only losing like a ½ inch of penetration, and still having that really good expansion. That looks really, really good. And similar thing going on here with the 357 Magnum, a little bit more damage than the 9mm, and we trucked along a lot further. Partly that's because it's a heavier bullet, and when you push a heavier bullet at similar velocities, you get a little bit more momentum. It does look like we have slightly less expansion than through our plain gel, so it did penetrate a little bit deeper, partly because of that. And we're at about 20.5 inches of penetration. Again, though, I would not consider that really over penetration. So looking at both of these did really well, but I'm going to say this right off the bat here. For what you're getting, you're kind of paying for it with the recoil with the 357 Magnum. With our 9mm, we're pretty much getting the same thing, just not as much deep penetration for a lot less felt recoil. So yeah, that is something to consider. But overall, our 357 probably did a little bit better, and it went a little bit deeper here. So I think, you know, you have to really look at your needs for something like this. For most people, you're not going to need as much penetration as that 357 Magnum gave. But if I had a 400-pound black bear charging down on me, I would rather have that 357 than that 9mm. But if I had to make multiple shots on a couple gangbangers coming after me, I think I'd rather have that 9mm. So let's take these up out of the block. We'll take a close-up look at them, and then I'm going to shoot my steel, see what kind of practical accuracy I can get with these. All right, so here's a close-up look at these bullets here. 357 over here, 9mm over here. Obviously our 357 is taller because it's a heavier bullet, so the bullet weight's got to go somewhere. So it's a little bit longer, taller of a bullet. Really good expansion with both of these. This is absolutely textbook perfect with our 9mm. Looks really good. Same thing with our 357 Magnum. They're probably about the same diameter. I haven't measured them yet with the calipers, but they're probably about the same. Now going through our medium density fiber board, here's our 9mm. Almost exactly the same thing going on, except the lead is a little bit more deformed, but we still have the same big pedals going on. Really good overall expansion. That's really good performance. With our 357 Magnum, we have a little bit more peeling back of those pedals because the energy is a little bit higher. So it's peeling back, but still really good performance overall. I'm not complaining. Both of these did really good across the board. There's not much to say about them other than they look fantastic. Really fantastic performance. 9mm, 357. So that's a close-up look at those. All right, I'm about 12 yards from the target, so I just want to see what kind of follow-up shots I can get on target. I do find it kind of funny when people talk about stuff like this, either a snub-nose 357 Magnum or a 44 Magnum. They act as if every gun, your trigger rate that you pull it is the same. So if it's a 9mm and you have this much recoil, well, if you just keep pulling the trigger, you're just always going to come back down on target. But if it's a 357 Magnum, it's going to go like this, and because your trigger pull rate's the same, you're going to go boom, 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 boom. Like, I just always kind of find that funny. When reality is, if you got more recoil, more muzzle flip, you wait a little bit longer before you fire that next shot. It's pretty simple, but some of the stuff I deal with. So just practical shootability follow-up shots. Let's see what I can do here with our 9mm, 12 yards from the target. All right, I had one go high. And also I want to mention a lot of times people look at what I'm doing here and they're like, well, my groups at 12 yards or 10 yards are like this. And it's like, well, they're doing slow target shooting. I'm just like popping them off, getting a quick front sight picture, throwing another shot just to see practical use, how they would do. So 357 mag, let's see how this does for me. And yeah, I did pull one over the target, and partly from that same stupid thing I was talking about. But this time it was more, it was kind of an accident because I was trying to bring it back down and I just thought it was back down. It wasn't quite. And I did end up pulling over the target. So that is something to keep in mind. So shootability is definitely better with the 9mm. Versus the 357 mag, but the 357 mag still can hit the target. So let me back up a little bit. I'll shoot a little bit slower, see how these continue to shoot for me. All right, 40 yards from the target. Let's see what I can get here. I'm actually going to have to go single action with this 9mm because the moon clip I have here, it seems to be bent. This Taurus revolver came with 5 moon clips. I broke 4 of them, and the last one I have now appears to be bent, and it won't rotate smooth enough double action to make any shots. So I'm gonna go single action from 40 yards, see what I can do with those. Huh, aiming center mass. Alright, not easy for me to make hits, and all those impacts are a lot higher than where I aimed. So that's something I've seen with 9mm revolvers. So 357 Magnum here. Got my trusty HKS speed loader. Not the perfect speed loader, but I'm so used to them. They work so well for me. So 357 Magnum. See how I can do with this. So the 357 Magnum has a lot of blast, but it seems to be more predictable for its accuracy. 9mm revolvers, it makes a lot of sense. It's not a bad idea. It just seems like sometimes there's a lot of little weird quirks that come up, and this moon clip thing is yet another one of these weird quirks that come up. It's kind of like a 9mm revolver in theory makes sense. You get one, you can get cheap ammo and all that stuff, but you have to go through so many little steps to essentially convert your revolver to something that's going to work well. And you got to get the right ammo, you got to vet that ammo, you got to make sure we don't got bullet creep going on, and most FMJ ammo will bullet creep. You got to make sure you get the right moon clip, and you got to upgrade your moon clips and all kinds of stuff like that. As with 357 Magnum or 38, you put the ammo in, you shoot it, you eject it, you get a nice speed loader for 10 bucks and it works. So across the board, I do think revolver cartridges make more sense than a revolver. But looking at this ballistic test here, I would say both of these did really well. A little bit ago, I'd say, if I was taking multiple shots, I'd rather have that 9mm. But honestly, sometimes the accuracy is all over the place in a 9mm revolver for me anyways. So I would kind of rather have a little bit slower follow-up shots, but to make sure to know I'm actually gonna hit what I aim at. I want something that I know is going to be reliable for me, and this 9mm setup isn't particularly reliable, but I'll stop complaining about that. We'll just go back to ballistic test here between both of these. Both of them did really well. And if you had a revolver that's going to function that HST pretty well, it's going to rotate it, you don't have any issues with the moon clips, and it hits point of impact for you, I would say, out of a lot of the rounds I've tested, this particular 9mm, it seems like it lost less velocity than some other versions I've tried. So it did pretty good overall. Our 357 Magnum, well, that's a good 357 mag. It is a bit much for a snub nose revolver. I tend to prefer 125 grain if I can get it, because I feel like that's a good balance between, having a full power 357 Magnum and not having too much muzzle rise. When you go to something like this 154 grain, and a lot of 158 grains are like this as well, it just snaps that muzzle up really high compared to 125 grain, and it almost feels impractical overall. So looking at both of these, they did pretty well. Both of them did pretty well. So there's not really a winner here. They both have different attributes that they did. 357 went deeper. Our 9mm expanded better without over penetrating. Our 9mm is easier to shoot, but 357 mag went deeper. That could be a good thing. So that's what you get today with this. So as always, comment, share, and like, and thanks for watching.